Good morning, everyone. Good to see you here. We're going to sing about God's love awakening us this morning. If you're still asleep at 11 o'clock. There were walls between us. By the cross you came and broke them down. You broke them down. There were chains around us. By your grace we are no longer bound. No longer bound.
You called me out of the grave. You called me into the light. You called my name and then my heart came alive. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. In the darkness shaking, all the dead are coming back to life. I'm back to life. Hear the song awaken, all creation singing, we're alive, 'cause you're alive. You called me out of the grave, you called me into the light. You called my name and then my heart came alive. Your love is greater, your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater, your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. What a love we found, death can't hold us down. Shout it out, we're alive, you're alive, and what a love we found, death can't hold us down. Shout it out, we're alive, 'cause you're alive, and what a love we found, death can't hold us down. Shout it out, we're alive, 'cause you're alive. Your love is greater, your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater, your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater, your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater, your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love
All right, you can have a seat.
Today is going to be a good day, so I'm excited you're here at New Hope. If you're here in the building, you probably received a scoop on the way in. You can find them available at any of the doors to the auditorium. This is where you'll find answers to basic questions about our church, along with news about what's happening around here. In the scoop or in the seat pocket nearby, you'll find a connection card. This is the best way to communicate with us. Just fill it out and drop it in the tall red box as you leave. But if today is your first time filling out a connection card, we have a gift for you. Simply take your card to the hub in the lobby. For those who are watching the live stream today, be sure to check out our website to learn more about us. And while you're there, scroll to the very bottom of the screen. Click on the little green envelope to send us a message and let us know you were here. Join us on the first Sunday of any month right after the second gathering for New to New Hope. This is a brief orientation where you can meet some of our staff, tour the building, and have an opportunity to ask questions. We'd love to help you decide if New Hope is right for you. Our staff devotes time each week to lifting up our church in prayer. Submitting a prayer request is as easy as writing it on a connection card or using the appropriate link found on our website or in the weekly newsletter. You can leave your requests anonymously or indicate if you want them included on the weekly prayer request list. Thank you for being here today. May God's peace fill your hearts this morning as we worship together.
can be seated. Well, good morning. Good morning. Old saying my preacher used to say was, if that don't light your fire, your wick must be wet. I grew up in Kentucky, what can I say? My name is Jason Allison, and I am so excited to be here today. I'm one of those rotating people that keep coming through here while your pastor is healing, and I know he has probably shared something that's going well, and we're excited, and I'm just so honored to be able to spend some time with you. I do love Rob and Bethany. They are two of the most special people in the world to me, and I know that you care deeply about them as well, so thank you for allowing me to be here for a little bit and just share. We are in a series, and so we'll continue that, but I did want to remind you that in just 2 weeks, it's Easter, which I think is a pretty big deal, among the, yeah, I mean, it's kind of important. So I would just start thinking now about who in your life, in your sphere of influence, right? Your neighbors, your friends, the person you see all the time that maybe doesn't have a church home, that maybe is not going anywhere, and you've been having conversations with them because you're just a nice person, right? And you just want to share the light of Jesus in their life. Take a minute and say, hey, you know what? We've got Easter coming at my church, and I'd love for you to come with me. Right, I just love for you to come hang out with me. It'll be good. It'll be great to see everybody. And I just encourage you, take a minute. Figure out who it is that you want to invite to come with you at Easter. Can you imagine this place totally packed with people who are saying, I want to hear who this Jesus is. And I mean, we just got through singing about speaking the name of Jesus through this whole town, through everything, and let's just do that. We don't need to keep it in here. Right? Let's go out there and do the same thing. I just want to encourage you. And if you really want to bless your pastor, then bring a whole bunch of people on Easter and show him that, he needs to hear this. It's not about him, right? It's about Jesus. And when Jesus shows up, people come to know him, and it's beautiful and wonderful. And so I just want to encourage you in that. We are in the series, and I want to bring you greeting. I am from Converge Mid-Atlantic, which is the church network that New Hope is part of. I also am a pastor on staff at a church down in Powell, Ohio, right outside of Columbus. And so it's part of what I do is I travel around the Mid-Atlantic district, and I just meet with churches and encourage them and give them some tools and resources and so forth. And the last 3 or 4 weeks, I have been in upstate New York and Baltimore and Pennsylvania, and I think it was somewhere else. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. I just want you to know that in all of these places, God is moving. There are good things happening. And God is doing something new as we have come out of this kind of depression of the pandemic existence, all of that stuff. God is starting to do some things. And you are part of a network of churches that is seeing this happen. And I just want to encourage you to say, God is moving here as well. And I'm excited that I get to even be here occasionally and be part of this. It's just so much fun. It really is. And I know it's the 11 o'clock service, which means you guys are thinking lunch already, so we'll dive right in. Rob, from what I understand, Rob drones on forever and ever, and I don't know if he's listening or not, but he probably is. But I just want to let you know, I don't know that, you're going to get to lunch on time. Let me put it that way. So we're in this series, and we're talking about this idea of God going off script. right? And I had the opportunity to open the series like 100 years ago, it feels like now. But we were talking about how God, life is more like improv than it is like a pre-scripted thing where you got to memorize these lines and know where to be and make sure you're in the right spot or God's not going to like you. No. God sometimes invites us into this thing called life. And sometimes our response needs to be like an improv class where we learn to say yes and instead of just resisting what God is doing. And to be open to wherever God may be leading us. And we looked at different ways that this happens and different things that we might struggle with in that. Some of the ways that we can respond. We talked about the idea of, thinking about what am I reaching for? What am I running from? Right? We talked about, am I just performing for God? Or am I allowing God to really tell me who I am? Am I bargaining with God? I know last week talked about confessing and acknowledging, admitting to God who we really are and what that looks like. And so today I want to talk about something a little bit different. I want to talk about what it's like in the midst of God going off script, in the midst of trying to figure out stuff, to rest. Right? To get some rest. What does it look like to stop in the middle of trying to get everything done, in the middle of trying to perform, in the middle of trying to understand and acknowledge? What would it look like if we really stopped and rested in God even when we didn't understand what was going on, when it felt like he was going off script? See, I think as Americans, as Western, Americans in the civilized culture we call the modern world, I think we might not have a very biblical understanding of rest. Because let's be honest, we work in order to rest, right? Everybody's working for the weekend, right? We do so that we can stop. But that's not exactly how Scripture presents this idea of resting in God. In Genesis chapter 1, it's the creation account, right? This is when God's doing all this stuff, right? He starts with nothing and this chaos, and he brings order, and there's light, and there's dark, and then there's like the earth and the heavens, and he goes on and builds all the way up, and of course it crescendos on the sixth day. He's creating these animals, and then he creates human. And that's like the end of creation, of the creation process, right? We're the climax of the creation narrative. Now think about this for just a second. God creates humanity, invites them into this creation process, right? He says, I want you to, be prosperous, multiply, right? Be fruitful. I want you to fill the land. But then it's night, and then it's day. Like literally, it's the last part of the work day when God creates humanity, and then he says, quitting time. Everybody just take a break. Get some rest. And then the next day is day 7, and what are you supposed to do on the 7th day in this narrative? It says God rested. We were created the last hour of the working week, Friday night in the way we would look at it, and then told the next day, don't worry about coming in, take the weekend off. We hadn't done anything yet, right? I mean, we were created, and the first thing we're told to do is, just relax. That's the way the Bible sets up the rhythm of our life. To me, it's almost like, we used to call people like that blister, because they showed up when the work was done. Right? We say, what's your problem? Why would you show up and then, it's quitting time? But that's how God created us. You ever thought about that? You were not created early so that you could do all the work for God. You were the climax of creation. And God invited you into the rest that he enjoyed the next day. In 1 Kings, there's another incident of this idea of rest. And the Bible has a whole bunch of stories, and we're obviously not going to get into all of them. But in 1 Kings 19, we run into this guy named Elijah. And Elijah is an interesting character, all right? He is let me give you a little bit of background here. He's a prophet, and he was probably one of the most powerful prophets. Even on the later when Jesus is around, right, he takes the 3 disciples up to we call it the Mount of Transfiguration, and what happens, Elijah and Moses show up and meet with Jesus. So Elijah was kind of a big deal. So Elijah is this prophet, but he's a prophet at this time. This is probably in what would be about the 900 to 800 kind of time frame, right, BC. And he's a prophet to the northern kingdom because Israel had been, they screwed up, basically, is what they did, right? And there was some infighting, civil war. They ended up splitting. The 10 northern tribes formed what they called Israel. The 2 southern tribes created Judah. And Judah, the very middle of it, was Jerusalem, which was the capital. So they kind of were the more powerful of the 2, even though there were more of the other. And Israel, Elijah was called to these 10 tribes up there to talk to them, to share with them what God is telling them to do, because all the kings of the north were terrible. Like, not just bad, like evil. And Elijah is trying to talk to this one named Ahab, right? And he calls him out, and he says, you're leading the people to do sacrifices the wrong way. They're worshiping the wrong gods. You're doing this. And, of course, he's married to this lady named Jezebel. Now, she was literally the original Jezebel that we talk about, when we say someone's a Jezebel, well, we're talking about her, all right? She was horrible. And so Elijah calls him out and says, hey, we're gonna have a little meeting, and we're going to see who's actually God, the one you worship or the God of Israel, of Isaac, right, Abraham and Jacob. And they have this big showdown on Mount Carmel. And all the priests from the false god Baal come, and then then Elijah is there, and he builds a little altar, and they build an altar, and they put a sacrifice on it, and he says, all right, don't light the fire, pray, and whichever God sends fire down to consume the altar, that's the God that we're going to worship. Cool, all right? It's all lined up. The duel is set. So the prophets from Baal, he says, you guys go first. So they start praying. And nothing happens. They get all whipped up into a frenzy, right? They're all frothy and running around. They're cutting themselves. Elijah's starting to dig on them too. He's pulling out some potty humor. If you read the text, he's like, maybe your God's in the bathroom. Shout a little louder. He's pretty rude, but he was right. But still, nothing happens. And then finally he says, all right, this is ridiculous. Let me show you how it's done. You feel like the devil went down to Georgia, that whole dueling fiddles, okay? And no, it's not. But he says, let me show you how to do this. He goes, all right, and he gets sacrifice ready, and then he dumps water all over the altar, right? A couple times, like it's soaked. And then he says, all right, God, light it up. Fire comes out of heaven, lights that thing up. Everybody is just looking around and going, whoa. And he looks at the people of Israel and says, now who are you going to worship? And they're like, we're going to worship God. That's amazing. So he has all the prophets of Baal taken out, and he has them killed. It's Old Testament stuff, okay? Don't worry about it. It's fine. He takes them out, and like 800 of these prophets they get rid of them. Well, Ahab, not happy, because he was in that camp. And it made him look bad. Worse yet, it made his wife Jezebel look bad, because she's the one who brought Baal worship into Israel. And you know what they say, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Well, Jezebel was not going to be happy, and Jezebel was going to make life miserable for everyone because of this. So let me just read, and what I want you to do is, just with all that background in place, hear what happens. Maybe put yourself in Elijah's sandals for a minute, and just think about, what would this be like? How would you react to all this? So in 1 Kings chapter 19, I'm going to start in verse 1. It says, when Ahab got home, he told Jezebel everything Elijah had done. Now, I can picture, I don't know about you, I can just picture him, this henpecked little man coming home. You're not going to believe what happened, right? Because, she called the shots. It was pretty obvious if you read all the stories. And you're just not going to believe this. And so he tells her, even including the way he had killed all the prophets of Baal. So Jezebel, this is Jezebel, not Ahab, okay? Once again, Jezebel sent this message to Elijah. May the gods strike me and even kill me if by this time tomorrow I have not killed you, just as you've killed those prophets of Baal. Now listen to this. Elijah was afraid, and he fled for his life. Literally just called fire from heaven. And now he's scared because this queen threatens him. Now let's be honest. She had the power to follow up on that threat, okay? But he's scared and he flees. It says he went to Beersheba, a town in Judah, which is the southern kingdom, right? He's fleeing the country, literally. And he left his servant there. Then he went on alone into the wilderness, traveling all day. He sat down under a solitary broom tree, and he prayed that he might die. I have had enough, Lord. Take my life, for I'm no better than my ancestors who have already died. Then he lay down, and he slept under the broom tree. But as he was sleeping, an angel touched him and told him, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there beside his head was some bread baked on hot stones and a jar of water. So he ate, and he drank, and he lay down again. Then the angel of the Lord came again and touched him and said, "Get up and eat some more, or the journey ahead will be too much for you." So he got up and ate, and he drank, and the food gave him enough strength to travel 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. Just Mount Sinai, that should ring a bell. Okay, if you're following along in the story, you know Mount Sinai, that's where God created the covenant between he and the people of Israel. That's where, Moses went up on the mountain and God carved into stone the outline of the covenant that he had with the people. We call it the Ten Commandments, right? And he comes down, and this is where God met the people, and so God says, that's where I want you to go. And there he came to a cave where he spent the night. But the Lord said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Now, I don't think God was asking him, "What are you doing here?" because God didn't know. I think it was more of all right, you were running scared after seeing an amazing example of my power from this woman who's threatening you, even though you have me on your side. And you ran and ran and ran until you left your servant in one place, and then you went a whole nother day out into the middle of nowhere, and you prayed to die. I told you to take a nap, eat some food, and then you came here. Tell me what's going on. Why are you seeking me here? And then God does something amazing. He says, I'm gonna come and visit you. And he takes him up to the top of the mountain. He hides him, and there's this big wind, and there's a storm, and there's fire, and all this stuff. But God's not in any of that. Then all of a sudden, it's calm, peaceful. And Elijah steps out, and God speaks to him in a gentle whisper. Not in the sound and fury of everything, but in a whisper. Even though he was running scared, even though he was really suicidal, even though he thought God had gone completely off script and there was no way that God could get him out of this mess with the queen, God shows up and he reveals himself. But not in the busyness, not in the craziness, but in the quiet. Sometimes the best thing we can do when it feels like God is going off script and the world has become as chaotic as you can imagine is take a holy nap. Stop. Rest. Get your bearings again. Recalibrate yourself. In scriptural terms, the word is Sabbath. Rest. And I'm not talking about laziness, where you just sit around for weeks on end and don't do anything, right, and expect everyone else to take care of everything for you. I'm talking stopping from an active existence and just stopping and saying, God, I'm gonna be with you. I'm gonna focus on you. That's Sabbath. And let's be honest, it's not always that practical, right? You ever been really busy and you just can't take a day, right? It's not always, it's not intuitive. A lot of us would say, well, I don't have time for that. Right? Maybe a little bit here, a little bit there, but I don't have time to take a day. Oh my goodness, what are you? No. But that's what he says. He says, I want you to take a day and rest. And here's my challenge as we think through this is I want to challenge you to think about developing this pattern, this rhythm of your life when things are calm, so that when things get crazy, you already have that muscle developed, right? You already have that rhythm in your life, and it's not something you have to try to add in when you're going nuts. Because I don't know about you, but when things get really, really hard, I can't develop a new skill in the middle of all that. I have to cultivate these disciplines while things are normal, so that when they get crazy, it's easy to fall back into that. And I don't want you to think of this as a legalistic approach, right? Where God, if I do this, right, I'm going to get I'll do this so that you'll bless me. I'll do this so that, as long as I follow these rules, God, right, you're going to meet everything. You're going to take care of it. It's because I'm following the rules. That's why you're doing it, right? It's kind of like this vending machine that's been up here, right? If we just put the coins in the right way and we push the right buttons, then everything will work out, right? No. I don't know about you, but I remember growing up, we had these things, and they still have them. I'm in airports all the time now, and I'm scared to use them because they've got those, those spirally little things, and they put like the chips in there, and you put your money in, and now it feels like it's like $20 for a little thing of, Lifesavers or whatever. You can use your credit cards now, right? So you do this, and then you push, A5, and that should be the right thing, and it goes, and it doesn't fall. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, that'll make a preacher cuss, all right? Like that's just, when you're hungry and you just spent your last dollar getting this thing, and it won't come out, and you're just like, what's you doing, and then you start shaking it, and then the TSA agents come over and they have a little talk with you, and not that I know. But right, things don't always work out. I don't want you to think of this as a legalistic, if I just put the right amount in, if I say the right prayers, if I go to church the right amount of times, if I read enough scripture, then all I got to do is follow this rule and then everything will work out, because it doesn't always work out. But I do want you to see that in the midst of this, what happens is you begin to cultivate a trust that God's going to show up, because you've seen him show up in the little things while things were calm. And when things get crazy, you have already developed a trust in him and a rhythm of stopping long enough to engage with him so that you can get through it. And you still might shake the machine, you still might kick, and you still might get upset, but I want you to know, ultimately, God is the one handling it. Not because you put your money in right, or you pushed the buttons right, or the machine worked right. God's handling it because he's God and you're not. So, let's look at, just quickly, last few minutes here, let's look at how the Bible frames this concept of Sabbath and why it prepares us for when God goes off script. And the word Sabbath, it literally just means to stop or to cease. Okay, you're doing, stop. And then you can start it, doing it again. Okay, it's a rest. So first thing that I think we need to understand about cultivating this idea of Sabbath in our life is that it is an act of obedience. It is truly saying, God, I'm going to obey what you've called me to do. I'm going to do it not because I think it's the best thing, not because I like it, I'm going to do it because you said to. It's obedience. You see, and it's interesting, in the Old Testament, there's two places where they talk about the Ten Commandments, and it presents this particular commandment in two different ways. The first one in Deuteronomy chapter 5. Listen to how this goes. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 12 says, "Observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy, as the Lord your God has commanded you. You have 6 days each week for ordinary work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day of rest, dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, your oxen and donkeys and other livestock, any foreigners living among you. All your male and female servants must rest as you do. Remember that you were once slaves in Egypt, but the Lord your God brought you out with his strong hand and powerful arm. That is why the Lord your God has commanded you to rest on the Sabbath day." You see, the Israelites, when they received this, for 400 years, they had been slaves. Their identity was wrapped up in doing, producing. Right? They were only as valuable as what they produced because they were slaves. They were only as good as their output. And they didn't get a day off because guess what? You don't rest the machine, right? That's all they were to the Egyptians. Because as long as they keep working, they keep producing. And that's where their value was. And God says, I got to break you of that. Because you aren't what you produce. Your value is not tied to what you do. It is tied to who I say you are. And the only way that you're going to truly break a generational process here is to create a rhythm where every 6 days, on the seventh day, you stop producing. So that you understand that's not who you are. Now, I know that's nothing like modern American culture, right? I mean, around here, everybody just feels their identity is wrapped up in who God says it is. The culture around us isn't anything about, what you produce or make. No, of course it is. I mean, that's all you hear. It's even with our social media stuff, right? It's like, I'm only as good as the amount of likes that I get, right? How many followers do you have? What is it? If I post something, how quickly am I getting likes? And we watch, and we're like, oh, yeah, okay, good, I'm valuable. Somebody liked my post. That's how we relate. And God's looking at us going, how about you shut that off for a day and quit worrying about what you produce and thinking that's why you're important to this world. And remember, you're important because I said you're important. That's it. Full stop. And that's sometimes hard to embrace, right? I mean, we are usually in this world all the time. And your boss is not going to necessarily agree with this. Your boss is going to say, wait. Why aren't you overproducing like everyone else? Well, because I take a day to rest in God and not produce for you. Because you're not God, and neither am I. Now, here's one area that I think is interesting. I think Sabbath and tithing are two disciplines and practices that are extremely counterintuitive. Right? They don't seem to be logical. Giving it says, hey, you've got 100% of what you earned, and God says, the practice that I would like you to see develop is where you give 10% back to me. And you live on the 90%, because honestly, it's all mine anyway, but I want you to understand that. And so we use this practice we call tithing, where we say, okay, 10% I'm going to give back to God. That doesn't make sense. I mean, really, why wouldn't I want all 100% of my money? I mean, that's kind of, it seems like I could do more if I had more, right? But if I give some back, I'm losing. It's not logical. Sabbath is a similar type thing where, here's the thing. If I had 7 days to get stuff done, couldn't I get more done in 7 than I would get done in 6? I mean, that's just math. But God says, no, I want you to trust me. I want you to be obedient, because what I think you'll see is that ultimately you will be more effective because you're trusting me, not because you're trusting you. And so it breaks us of that. It reminds us that we are not only as valuable as what we do. See, Elijah had to stop. He had to rest. I mean, if you think about it, he'd been pretty busy. Probably took him a few minutes to kill 800 prophets. He needed to stop and realize it's not him changing Israel's hearts. It's God. And he needed to rest and refocus his attention on God. It's an act of obedience. I think, second of all, it's an act of worship. It's an act of worship. It's stopping and saying, God, I'm just going to acknowledge you're God and I'm not. I'm going to take a day and not produce because I'm going to trust you to show up. Because I believe you're God. Now, I said there were two places where the Ten Commandments are, that whole narrative is told. The second one is actually before Deuteronomy in Exodus 20. And this is probably the one most of you are familiar with. If you watch the old Moses movie, the Ten Commandments, right? It comes out and all this stuff. Okay, that one's taken from Exodus. Listen to what the Exodus, how it relays this one commandment about Sabbath. It says, remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but on the seventh day is the Sabbath day of rest, dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons, your daughters, your male, your female servants, your livestock, and any foreigners living among you. Sounds kind of like the first one, doesn't it? Here's where it changes. For in 6 days, the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in them. But on the seventh day, he rested. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy. Had nothing to do with slavery. Had nothing to do with their identity. It had to do with worshiping the God who created everything. Now, I don't think these are contradictory or conflicting. I think it's just two different angles of seeing why God would give this command. One, to remind us who we are. The second one, to remind us who he is. And so we stop and we honor God by remembering his rhythm of creating. The rhythm that he instilled into us, into all of creation. And we honor God as God. We step back from the daily grind and say, God, today's yours. And we're going to have some fun. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to be in your presence. I'm going to seek you. I'm going to talk to you. Because in the middle of the week, when everything's going crazy and it's really busy, sometimes it's hard. It's hard to stop and just spend some time with God. And so he said, I know that. I understand that. So take a day. Just dedicate the day to it. Help your family enjoy it. Enjoy your family. Crazy thought, I know. But enjoy it. Take that one day where we don't call the shots. And we remember that God is the one calling the shots. Sometimes I wonder if God doesn't go off script on us sometimes simply to shake us up so that we have to stop and remember who he is. Like, I'm just thinking back, and obviously we have 2020 hindsight. I don't even know if we have 2020 hindsight, but looking back over the last few years with the pandemic, the shutdown, the mask, all the junk that went on, and it was some of it was terrible, okay? But I do remember as we were people started reflecting on it, and they're like, well, the one silver lining in this is, well, I got to know my family again, right? I spent some time at home. I was able to rest a little bit because I couldn't go anywhere. I wasn't going to put a mask on just to go down the street to the I was like, no, we'll just wait, and so we took our time. And things slowed down. Did you know, ecologically, things happened on the earth like that? The canals in Venice, which are notoriously disgusting, because for 6 months no one was on them, they cleaned themselves up, naturally got clean. They're nasty again now because we got back on them. But you see, something about that. There was a reset that happened. And we kept looking, remember, now we're looking back, remember in the pandemic when we had game night at home and we played with the kids and we did things and people weren't always out going somewhere doing something. And we look back at that, and I wonder if maybe That wasn't a stop of the old stuff and then, kind of like, oh, look, here's a picture of what could be when heaven gets here. What if God was saying, that's actually supposed to be the norm? What you're doing is crazy. The way you're living, the pace that you're living at is, I didn't create you to live like that. I wanted you to enjoy your life. Enjoy your family. Enjoy, having enough time to stop and breathe and enjoy the world around you. I gave you a system that said, take one day and just stop. But you kept going and going and going and going and going, and it took a pandemic for us to realize, oh, wait, there is something better if I'm willing to live by God's way. You see, it is an act of worship because it's saying, God, I trust that you're in charge. And I'm gonna acknowledge that. I'm gonna live in a way that others look at me and go, why do you take one day and not accomplish anything? Because I'm spending time just acknowledging who God is, my God, my King, the one I want to follow, the one I want to be with, the one I understand. And they're like, well, you're nuts. Yeah. But man, my life has meaning. It has purpose. I feel it. And we can share that. Which leads to the last thing. It is an act of trust. You don't take a day off unless you trust that things are going to keep going without you. If any of you have kids, you probably remember the first time you left your kids home alone. It was probably for 20 minutes because you didn't trust them, right? You're wondering what was going to blow up while you were gone. But you remember you leave them, and then the next time a little bit longer, a little bit, and you start, because you trust, right? You build that trust of, hey, you know what? We're going to go first to Kroger to get something really quick, and then we'll be right back. And then we're going to go to dinner. And then we're going to do dinner and a movie. You guys are okay, or because you developed a trust that it would be okay. Well, stopping one day and saying, God, I'm going to just trust you, that the world will keep on going without me adding to it. Because you're God and I trust you. And I'm not as important as I think I might be. So God, I'm going to trust you to show up. In Isaiah, Isaiah writes it this way in Isaiah 58. He says, keep the Sabbath day holy. Don't pursue your own interests on that day, but enjoy the Sabbath and speak of it with delight as the Lord's holy day. Honor the Sabbath in everything you do on that day, and don't follow your own desires or talk idly. Then the Lord will be your delight. I will give you great honor and satisfy you with the inheritance I promised your ancestor Jacob. I, the Lord, have spoken. To stop and simply be in the presence of God is to trust God to provide. When you think you need to be in control, Sabbath reminds you to trust. While the Israelites were in the wilderness, God would send manna from heaven. Remember that? They would be out there, and he told them, he says, listen, every day I just want you to go out and get enough for today. Except on the sixth day. On the sixth day, I want you to gather enough for 2 days. Because on the seventh day, there's not going to be any, because that's your day of rest. And so, of course, they show up on the first day, and he says, just gather enough for the day, but people gather tons and tons, and they take it back, and they eat it, and then they store some for the next day. They open it up, and it's got maggots and mold, and it's disgusting. I'm like, oh, well, okay, lesson learned. And they go out, and of course, the next day, there's plenty for everybody. So then the sixth day, they gather enough for 2 days, and next morning, they open it thinking it's going to be nasty, but it's not. It's fine. And some of the people went out on that seventh day to gather some. And God's like, what are you doing? I told you it wouldn't be here. And it wasn't. You see, God instilled in them, even in that moment, are you going to trust me? I told you to take a day off in my 10 Commandments, right? I set it up. I said, this is the covenant. This is the way we're going to interact with each other. And I'm even going to do it to the point of your food. I'm going to provide enough. So on the seventh day, you don't have to go out and gather. And yet they still did. But he said, I'm teaching you. Because sometimes, let's be honest, we're slow learners, and it takes a little time for God to teach us what his rhythm really is and why it matters. This is, I want you to trust me. It'll work out. I got you. It may not work out the way you wanted, and it may not be, all the pain may not be taken away, but I want you to know I've got you, and I'm working ultimately for what is best. If you'll trust me. Because see, what happens when we learn to rest, when we work into the rhythm of our life, rest and stopping Sabbath, it frees us from the idol of exhaustion. Have you ever noticed when you're talking to someone and they're like, hey, how you doing? Oh, man, I'm so tired. And you're like, whoa, you must be really important then. Right? If you're tired, a lot of people must rely on you. You must be really important. Right? We kind of make an idol out of being exhausted. I don't think that's what God wanted. God was like, no. I want you to enjoy your life. Jesus said in John 10:10, I came to give you life and life to the full. He didn't say I came to give you life so you're exhausted. No, I came to give you life so you can be alive. And if the gospel is truly good news, then why are we walking around exhausted all the time? Why are we walking around saying, yay, the gospel's good news, but oh my goodness, I got to go to church again. I got to serve this week. No. It should be good news. I am a child of God. Not because I went to church, I did this, I gave this, I prayed this. I am a child of God, and my value is wrapped up in that simply because God said so. And I can rest in that. I can get off the hamster wheel of productivity at least once a week and say, God, thank you that I am more than that because I'm yours. My favorite story in the New Testament is the disciples and Jesus had done all this work. They'd done all this stuff. They'd fed thousands of people. They'd teaching and healing and all this stuff. And Jesus said, hey, let's get in the boat. Let's go to the other side. So they hop in the boat. Jesus curls up and falls asleep. Totally understandable. Well, they're out in the middle of the lake and a storm comes up. And the disciples are fighting. They're like, oh, we're going to die. This is horrible, which maybe it was. I don't know. They were fishermen and they were scared, right? If you're a fisherman used to being on the water and you're scared, it's probably a bad storm, okay? And so they're fighting, and they look over, and Jesus is still napping. And, I can imagine they had to look at him and go, what is going on? And it says, the text says they woke him. Something tells me it wasn't a, hey, Jesus, I think they stood on the other side of the boat and were like, dude, come on. We are drowning here, literally. And Jesus gets up. And he's like, why are you guys so stressed out? And then he just goes, peace. And the thing stops. And pointing out the obvious, the writers of the Gospels go, and they were afraid of Jesus at that point. But I love that because in the midst of a storm, because Jesus knew who he was, he knew who God was, he knew what God was doing, he could sleep. He could rest because he trusted God. I want to be at a place where I have cultivated the discipline of practicing Sabbath so that I can trust God when it gets crazy, when it feels like God's going off script. Because I've been doing it all along, and I've developed that discipline. But it takes trust. And so my challenge to you is, how will you start cultivating a rhythm of rest? Saying, God, I trust you. I'm going to be obedient, and I'm going to worship you. And one day a week, I'm going to pause and say, yes, Lord. Here I am. Let's just hang out. Will you trust him that much? Let's pray together. Lord Jesus, thank you that we can trust you. I know sometimes that's hard, and sometimes you don't always do what we expect you to do. And it can be a little frustrating, God, I'm not going to lie. There have been times in my life where I've asked you to do something, I've asked you to show up, I've asked you to respond, and you don't show up the way I wanted you to. And I get a little ticked off at you at that, I'm not going to lie. But you know that. And you just invite me to take a holy nap. Relax. Trust you. Father, I pray for the people in this room, the people that are watching online. God, I pray that they would lean into resting in you. May they sense your presence in a new way. And if today is the day that they need to say, you know what, I've never actually trusted you to be the king of my life, the Lord of my life, then may this day be the one where they say, Lord, I'm yours. I trust you. I will follow you. Lord, give us rest in a crazy world, and we will give you glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Letting go of every single dream. Lay each one down at your feet. Every moment of my wandering, never change.
can have a seat for a second.
Take a second to think. If you could design your future, what would it look like? If you could design a tomorrow where you are no longer stuck, drained, overlooked, what would that feel like? Your ability to raise the lid of your leadership, to go from chaos to clarity, to bring tomorrow to life, is multiplied when you are equipped. The Global Leadership Summit is where leaders gather to learn more from each other, to build accountability, to be equipped to handle the leadership challenges of tomorrow. It's more than an event. It's a community where greatness is forged. Take a second, then take a step that equips you to design your tomorrow. Register for the Global Leadership Summit today.